Hello, I'm going to talk about why clouds are really white. If you look on Google and search why are clouds white, and the top links that you get suggest that the clouds are white because of the water droplets in the clouds that reflect the white light. I want to disagree because that doesn't make sense. I want to show you three reasons why water is not the reason clouds are white, but the reason clouds are dark. The reason clouds are white is because of air pockets, which are distributed throughout the clouds in a haphazard way. And because of this, the light strikes the air at different angles in a chaotic fashion, and the light is reflected back to us. Air does not absorb light. The light is reflected back to us, and we see the clouds as white. The first way to think about this is think about things that we see in our environment that are white. For instance, a, a beer, a glass of beer, and the foam of the beer is pure white, even though the liquid underneath the foam is amber or yellow. So the beer head is white because that's the froth, which contains not oxygen and nitrogen, but carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide gas molecules reflect back the light to us, and they create a white foam. Another example is when you whip up egg whites. Egg whites are translucent, but when you whip them up and put air into the mixture, you produce stark white egg whites. Polar bears have white fur, and the reason that they have white fur is that the hair shafts are hollow and contain air. And again, when the light strikes that air, which is in disorganized packets in the hair shaft, the polar bear's fur looks white, even though the skin of the polar bear underneath their fur is black. That's one way to think of why clouds are white. They have disorganized packets of air. Look at when clouds turn black and threatening, and you know that there's an impending storm. Why do they turn very dark? It's because they have increasing numbers and volumes of large water droplets. Water absorbs light. And so if you have this huge cloud with humongous amount of water droplets, and the water droplets have kicked out the air molecules away from the cloud to the top reaches of the cloud, because of the air drafts that push the air up, the water droplets will absorb the light, and the underneath surface of the cloud, which is the heaviest in drops of water, will look dark and threatening, whereas the top surfaces of the clouds will look white. When you're traveling in an airplane and you look down at the clouds, they look white, and that's because of the updrafts of air creates the ballooning of the clouds, and that reflects light back to us as white light. We've talked about foaming things that make them look white. We've talked about the undersurface of the clouds that looks dark because of extra water. The third instance I want you to think about is, let's take water which becomes frozen like snow or ice. If you make an ice cube at home and you freeze it relatively fast because the freezer is cold, the ice cube will harbor pockets of air inside it because the outside cools and pushes the air bubbles into the inside, and when the whole ice cube freezes, the inside air pockets are frozen inside the ice cube, and a regular ice cube from your freezer can look like it has small clouds in it. However, if you freeze ice cubes slowly, that gives a chance for the air bubbles to leave as the ice cube freezes, particularly if you follow a system which I talk about with a link in the article below. If you freeze it so the air bubbles have a chance to leave, you can produce perfectly clear ice, which looks like water, except it's a frozen ice cube. Similarly with snow, snow looks white because when the water molecules freeze as snow and layer on the ground, they capture air pockets, and those will reflect back as white. However, if you pack snow or ice very tightly so that you have a large amount of snow of ice, which is packed very tightly so that the air bubbles leave, for instance, in icebergs that have accumulated snow and ice over time, and so the weight of the frozen water pushes out the air, those large icebergs can look blue, and there's a picture of that in the article below. For those three areas, you can see that when there's no air, the subject matter can look clear or blue. But when there is air intermixed with the water, whether it's frozen water or it's in clouds, if there's air mixed in, the air bubbles and the pockets of air will reflect the white light back to us. And that's why clouds look very white, particularly the clouds which are very high in the troposphere, which have which have less amounts of water droplets, and they're made mainly of ice crystals. They look pure white. And it's only when the clouds come further down in the troposphere and accumulate more water in the form of liquid water that they start looking darker gray at first and really dark, almost black, when you have the very dense clouds of a nimbostratus cloud, which is chock full of rain.